instead of just letting them do their jobs, which they want to do while we work out our differences. So wrong.
This is democracy. And in a democracy, hostage tactics are the last resort for those who can't win their fights through elections, can't win their fights in Congress, can't win their fights for the presidency, and can't win their fights in the courts.
A government shutdown of any duration would harm hardworking Americans and our economy.
Why should we ask TSA officers to go without their hard-earned pay while they protect our airports?
I'm a senator from Virginia. Some of the hardest effects of shutdown will be seen in my state.
If the government shuts down, it will be average Americans who suffer most.
Some who right now are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent, how they're going to make mortgage payments, how they're going to keep college payments going, how they're going to keep the lights on, how they're going to keep food on the table.
Had the government shut down, hundreds of thousands of people would have not gotten their paychecks. Federal employees would have been furloughed, sent home.
Our military won't get paid. Head Start teachers won't get paid. Our wildfire fighters won't get paid. Federal prison guards won't get paid.
A government shutdown means seniors who rely on Social Security could be thrown into chaos. Our veterans could see regional VA offices shut down and support services put on hold.
Shutdowns are not good for the economy.
Shutdowns cost taxpayers billions of dollars per week.
Shutdowns cost the economy billions of dollars.
They cost businesses money. They could even cause a downgrade to the nation's credit rating.
Families who benefit from WIC and other nutrition programs could see benefits halted.
If this shutdown continues indefinitely, 39 million Americans will risk not having enough food. They will lose their SNAP benefits in February. So that means American children will be going to bed hungry. It's unacceptable.
The longer that this shutdown goes on, the more Americans that will be affected.
Critical services and our economy are being threatened with poison pill partisanship. Shutting down the government should not be a negotiating tactic.
Hostage taking is all they have left. A last gasp of those who cannot cope with the realities of our democracy.
To hold these people hostage, instead of just letting them do their jobs, which they want to do while we work out our differences, so wrong.
This is democracy. And in a democracy, hostage tactics are the last resort for those who can't win their fights through elections, can't win their fights in Congress, can't win their fights for the presidency, and can't win their fights in the courts.
A government shutdown of any duration would harm hardworking Americans and our economy.
Why should we ask TSA officers to go without their hard-earned pay while they protect our airports?
I'm a senator from Virginia. Some of the hardest effects of shutdown will be seen in my state.
If the government shuts down, it will be average Americans who suffer most.
Some who right now are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent, how they're going to make mortgage payments, how they're going to keep college payments going, how they're going to keep the lights on, how they're going to keep food on the table.
Had the government shut down, hundreds of thousands of people would have not gotten their paychecks. Federal employees would have been furloughed, sent home.
Our military won't get paid. Head Start teachers won't get paid. Our wildfire fighters won't get paid. Federal prison guards won't get paid.
A government shutdown means seniors who rely on Social Security could be thrown into chaos. Our veterans could see regional VA offices shut down and support services put on hold.
Shutdowns are not good for the economy.
Shutdowns cost taxpayers billions of dollars per week.
Shutdowns cost the economy billions of dollars.
They cost businesses money. They could even cause a downgrade to the nation's credit rating.
Families who benefit from WIC and other nutrition programs could see benefits halted.
If this shutdown continues indefinitely, 39 million Americans will risk not having enough food. They will lose their SNAP benefits in February. So that means American children will be going to bed hungry. It's unacceptable.
The longer that this shutdown goes on, the more Americans that will be affected.
Critical services and our economy are being threatened with poison pill partisanship. Shutting down the government should not be a negotiating tactic.
Hostage taking is all they have left. a last gasp of those who cannot cope with the realities of our democracy.
To hold these people hostage
unaffordable is unacceptable. And that's why we are taking this stand and why America can't wait for Donald Trump to tell them that they are sick enough now to be given this subsidy which they deserve. I'm here to urge my Republican colleagues to stop rolling over for Donald Trump. Their constituents, as well as ours, are affected by this delay in providing affordable health insurance. For months, we have been calling attention to the need to act now. And this shutdown was avoidable. The path to stopping it was available, and shortening it, assuming it will occur, is still a possibility. If we come together, if Republicans are willing to negotiate, if they come back to town, House Republicans are out of town. They are out of touch with reality. And the way forward is simply bipartisan negotiations, coming together, reaching a solution, as is the way shutdowns have been avoided in the past. The fact is that Donald Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill, actually a big, blatant betrayal, along with inaction and avoidance by Republicans, are already wreaking havoc on Americans. In Connecticut, health insurance rates for 2026 have increased by nearly 18%, the largest increase in the last 6 years. Without the subsidies, consumers with ACA coverage will see premium increases in the range of 75%. I have visited with hospitals, community health centers, physicians, and many more who have raised their deep concerns about the impending cuts in Medicaid. The budget bill Republicans passed in July is threatening also Medicaid coverage for 158,000 Connecticut residents. And anyone lucky enough to keep their coverage will see reduced benefits as the state struggles to make up the differences in lost federal revenue. Americans and our health care system simply can't afford to be nickel and dime like Republicans are forcing them to do. The ACA premium tax credits have protected millions of Americans from higher health care costs. They've reduced the number without health care insurance. They've provided robust choices for consumers and provided stability for health care providers, particularly in rural areas, and there are rural areas affected in Connecticut. And in addition to the impending cuts in Medicaid, Republicans are refusing to extend these subsidies. It is cruel, it is unnecessary, it is dumb. So I'm here to advocate for the 139,000 Connecticut residents who depend on these credits and the 24 million Americans who are making decisions about health care insurance coverage right now at their kitchen tables, in their living rooms, in their homes. It should not be a partisan issue. At the end of the day, it's a choice. Do we choose a highly successful solution that has reduced health care costs for the whole nation, or do we allow the clock to run out and raise health care costs for families in every state in this country? That choice can still be made in the next 24 hours, in the next 2 days, to shorten and lessen the pain that will be felt by Americans. I choose to stand with working families. I will fight, and we are unified in our fight as a matter of conscience and conviction. We will not be bullied. Donald Trump should know that we will stand strong for working families in America. They deserve health care. It is about saving health care and holding Donald Trump accountable to follow the law. When there is a budget, when it's passed by Congress and signed by the president, he cannot be allowed to simply ride roughshod over it and disregard it. It is the rule of law and health care that's at stake here, and I will fight for them. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield.
The senator from Rhode Island.
Well, we are headed into a miserable situation. It is a miserable situation for all of the federal employees around the globe who are going to be put into shutdown mode. It is a miserable situation for our country as the rest of the world looks at us as the gang that can't get its act together and pass simple funding bills for the government. It is an extraordinarily frustrating moment to be here now. There are very few people for whom this is not a miserable prospect, but there are a few of them, and one of them is OMB Director Russell Vought, who is a strange character who has spent his life in the care and feeding of the fossil fuel industry and big polluters, and who takes a perverse joy in destroying American government from the inside. Mr. President, I see that the Majority Leader has come to the floor, asked unanimous consent that when he is concluded and I pick my remarks back up, my remarks be linked back together as if they had been made without interruption.
Without objection.
With that, I yield the floor to the Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank the Senator from Rhode Island for yielding. I'll be very quick here. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate now proceed to the in-block consideration of the following resolutions which are at the desk: SRS 427, SRS 428, SRS 429.
Is there an objection to proceeding en bloc? Without objection, the Senate will proceed en bloc.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the resolutions be agreed to, the preambles be agreed to, and the motions to reconsider be considered made, laid upon the table, all in block.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Judiciary be discharged from further consideration. The Senate now proceed to SRS 396.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 396, condemning the tragic act of violence on September 10, 2025 in Evergreen, Colorado, and so forth.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October the 1st, that following the prayer and pledge, the journal proceedings be approved today at the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the 2 leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. Morning business be closed, and Senate resume consideration of calendar number 115, S2296.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, for the information of my colleagues, senators should expect 3 votes at 11 a.m. and further votes later in the day. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order following the remarks of my colleagues.
Without objection. The senator from Rhode Island.
So there will be misery ahead for most normal people, not counting the weird ones who like inflicting pain and doing damage for the benefit of a bunch of creepy right-wing billionaires who've propped them up their whole lives. And the reason we're here is really twofold. One, as they've shown during the Trump regime, Republicans really don't want to govern. They want to rule. They don't want to talk to Democrats, even where they need our votes. Here they need our votes. And yet, what have we been offered to get those votes? Nothing. Not even discussions. The president only met with the Democratic leaders just yesterday. And he didn't seem to be aware of what was at stake here for the Americans who are about to lose a huge health care benefit. They just go wildly forward. We've seen it over and over again here on the Senate floor. How many times in just the few months that we've been here in this administration have Republicans done the thing that they were furious when we even talked about doing, to overrule the parliamentarian and change the rules to make things easier for themselves rather than negotiate with us? My count is 4 already. 4! And we're only 9 months in. They don't want to govern. They don't want to talk to us. They want to rule. They want to dictate to us. And at the same time, the other reason we're here is that there's this strange Republican fixation with taking health care away from people. I do not understand it. There are lots of Republican constituents who really depend on Medicaid, who really feel great that they're on Medicare, who really have their family budgets made possible by the credits from the Affordable Care Act. It's not like Democrats get the benefit of this. Everybody gets the benefit of this. And yet, what have we been put through just in these months? $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid. $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid. Already, hospitals and nursing homes and doctors' practices are reeling at what those cuts mean for their financial viability. Medicare, $500 billion in cuts, hidden in the bill in a tricky way so that the cuts come through sequestration and nobody has to own them. They can do a Pontius Pilate hand wash of the cuts. Well, no, we saw what you did. You own it. It's a $500 billion cut to Medicare. And why you would want to do that, I cannot imagine, but that's what you did. And now we have these cuts to people receiving help, paying for their health care under the Affordable Care Act. It's going to be about 40,000 Rhode Islanders. These aren't people who have loads of money. Their premiums are going to, on average, double or better. I mentioned a retired mental health counselor yesterday. She's going to have $477 in added expense every single month because of this. And it all starts now. It all starts happening now. So when we're told, why are we forcing the issue now? It's because now is when the issue is upon us. When we're told, why don't we negotiate later? My question is, why aren't we negotiating now? Why would we believe when we're told that you'll negotiate later on this when you won't negotiate now on this? Now, when you need our votes, you won't negotiate on something that you say you'll negotiate later? Why does that make any sense? Why is that even remotely credible? The harm starts now. The negotiations should start now. And frankly, what Democrats are asking for is something you ought to be doing anyway, just to help your own constituents. This shouldn't be hard at all. We should not be here having this conversation. This should have been resolved already, except that the Republican majority wants to rule, not govern, and they have this strange fixation with taking away health care, even from their own constituents. Over and over again, we've seen it. We've seen it with the repeated overrulings of the parliamentarian. We've seen it with the Beautiful for Billionaires bill that got rammed through with a simple majority. We've seen it with the change in the rules to allow 100 nominees to go through at a time under advice and consent. We have seen it with clean air standards that help everyone being repealed over and over and over again. The Republicans take the path that allows them to rule, not to govern, that allows them to ignore the minority party even when they need our votes, even when what we're asking for is in their constituents' interests, even when what we're asking for is something that their constituents want. Even then, we're up against this blockade. So I hope that Republicans come to their senses. I hope that the president realizes what he is doing and that we can put an end to this shutdown as quickly as possible. But let me make this absolutely clear. This is a shutdown that lands entirely at the feet of the Republican Party that controls the Senate, that controls the House, that controls the presidency, that won't negotiate with Democrats even when it needs our votes, and that has an unhealthy fixation with taking away health care from their fellow Americans. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Delaware is recognized.
Madam President, I'm asking why we're here. Why we're here on the floor of the Senate as the hours tick down to the end of the federal fiscal year and the shutdown of the federal government. I've served here 15 years. I've seen my share of shutdowns, and I know how much they hurt the men and women of our military, federal law enforcement, folks who serve and protect our country at home and abroad. And they should not have to wonder when or if they'll get paid. A shutdown isn't good for our reputation abroad and our cohesion at home. I have always worked to find some path, some deal, some way to keep the government open. And I've talked to a dozen colleagues in recent days about this fight and about tonight. This is about health care. This is about my party saying enough is enough. We know that if you have health care, everything else can work itself out. And if you don't have your health, almost nothing else matters. President Trump ran on making America healthy again, on reducing prices, on making life easier for the working people of our country and their families. And instead, what we've seen is decision after decision, action after action by President Trump and the Republicans in Congress that raises prices on health care, on insurance, on drugs, on medications, whether it's the tariffs being imposed on prescription medications or the decision to end subsidies that keep health insurance affordable, or it's laying off thousands of researchers working to help cure pediatric cancer or address ALS or do research into HIV/AIDS, decision after decision that moves us in the wrong direction, that makes us sicker, poorer, and more divided. I'm usually one of the first to walk across the aisle and say, let's find a solution, let's find a way out of this, and I've been doing that in recent days, talking with colleagues. But I can't see a way forward if we can't change direction and together say to the people we serve, we want to help with your health care. We want to stop the cuts to NIH and CDC. We want to reduce the increases in health insurance costs. We want to help you and your family. In my home state of Delaware, emergency room wait times are too long. And as millions of Americans get thrown off of health insurance, they're going to go to the emergency room. And those wait times will get longer and longer for all of us. Next month, we're going to find out how much health insurance premiums go up. For some Americans, they're going to double, but for all of us, they will go up. Healthcare is getting costlier, and Americans are getting sicker. So why am I standing on this floor tonight saying I'm not voting to keep this government open? Because enough is enough. There are ways we can and should work together to change direction, to put on the floor the bipartisan health appropriations bill that'll restore tens of billions of dollars to the NIH and CDC, that'll stop Trump's cuts to American health care and insurance and research. There's a path towards reforming and extending the Affordable Care Act that both parties should agree on. But folks, if you're listening, your member of Congress needs to hear from you, needs to know that you want us to work together to reverse course and end Trump's tragic cuts to health care. If my colleagues don't get those calls, they won't change direction. If they don't change direction, we won't reopen this government. Make no mistake, we have Republicans in control of the House and Senate and the White House. If they want to find a way forward that reduces the harm to Americans and our health care, we can. And I'll be one of the first to extend my hand to find that path. But if we don't change direction, we shouldn't reopen this government, because Americans have taken too many hits already, too much additional cost, too much cuts to health care research, too much increase to health insurance costs. This is a fight about America's health care, and we're fighting for you. Thank you. With that, I yield the floor.
The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Minnesota.
Madam President, I have 7 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Madam President, as my colleague from Delaware just noted, we are here today because Republicans have created a healthcare crisis for millions of Americans. And like the senator from Delaware, I am someone that works across the aisle all the time. I have one of the best records for bipartisan bills, and I think that's an important part of our governing, and that is to find common ground. You don't always pick your neighbors, but you find a way to live next to your neighbors. You find a way to work with them. And what is so unfortunate about what's going on tonight is that didn't happen here. There was no crossing over the fence with some coffee for the neighbors to try to have a meeting, to try to work this out. In fact, it was Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries that had a request time and time again that got canceled on a meeting with the president. There is still time to continue to negotiate, but not if they're just going to say, hey, this healthcare thing, it's not a problem. Well, maybe we can deal with it in December. First of all, who would believe that when Donald Trump just decides one thing one day or posts something on Truth Social and then everyone changes what they agreed to, which has happened time and time again. So that's one reason it's not reality, unless he's at the table. Number 2, it's not reality because this is not a December problem. This is not a January problem. This is a now problem. November 1st, that's when people start re-enrolling. Whole bunch of small businesses, 20 million people, more than a quarter of the farmers in this country who are already facing, as one of my farmers said to me last week, a perfect storm of ugly. That's about the tariffs, that's about their input costs with fertilizer, and that's about their personal health care costs. A perfect storm of ugly. When you're in a big storm in Minnesota, you don't just go outside and hold an umbrella and think maybe it'll go away. You do something about it then. You take cover then. You help people take cover then. That's not what they're doing with this vote tonight. We have a bill that would help millions of Americans sleep easier. We're still dealing with the tariffs. We're still going to push on that, which has led to all of these grocery cost increases. We see what's happening with the electricity cost increase. Costs are up, chaos is up, and corruption is up. But there is one thing we can do, and that's one of the biggest cost drivers when we look at inflation, and that is health care. So let's start with how we got here. We know that over 110 million Americans depend on Medicare and Medicaid. 110 million. These programs cover everything from hospital visits to life-saving prescriptions to the long-term care that allows seniors to remain in their homes. And these programs, along with Social Security and SNAP, which is the nutrition program, have driven poverty among seniors for years to record lows. Best poverty-fighting program there is, Medicare, Medicaid. But the budget that congressional Republicans passed earlier this summer without our votes, again, didn't listen to us, makes the biggest cut in history to Medicare and Medicaid. That's right, the biggest cut in history, while all these other costs are going up. Their budget cut Medicaid by over $1 trillion and will trigger more than $500 billion in Medicare cuts. How does that happen? Because they didn't put, well, the debt is so high from that bill because of the $1 trillion in tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans and the $1 trillion in tax cuts and giveaways for corporations, that it actually automatically triggered $500 billion in Medicare cuts on hospitals. So when we go, as we did, our members on the Democratic side last week, and met with people in hospitals and patients and doctors and nurses, we heard about that. We heard about the 15 million Americans that are going to get shoved off their health care. But the one thing they could have done, and they voted against it once, but we know behind closed doors they're very interested in doing something about this, it is the tax credits to help people afford their health insurance. Without these tax credits, more than 20 million Americans will see their premiums skyrocket. Kaiser study just today came out. Double the premiums, double the premiums. That's why one of my hospitals told me, look, of course Medicaid hits us hard, of course Medicare does, but so many of our patients and the people who visit our clinic are on MNsure, that's the Affordable Care Act plan in my state, that if this happens, a whole bunch of them won't be able to afford it. Then they're going to show up in our emergency rooms, they're going to show up without insurance, they're not going to get the surgeries that they need, and they're not going to do their doctor's visits. That's why you've seen some Republicans, some overtly saying, we've got to do something about this. They shouldn't be talking about off-ramps. They should be talking about how to get their constituents off a cliff. Earlier this year, we marked the 60th anniversary of Medicare and Medicaid. As we look back at this monumental achievement, we should be strengthening health care in this country, not undermining it. We made progress, right? Capping out-of-pocket costs, passing my bill to allow Medicare to finally negotiate for better prices, making health care more affordable. But we should be building on that progress because the status quo is not okay for people right now. We should be building on that progress by making improvements to these programs, not making them harder. So we are calling on our Republican colleagues to pass our bill. And if they can bring themselves to do that, or at least to sit in a room and negotiate and actually get this done, the president prides himself in the art of the deal, well, show us the deal. Don't say you don't need our votes, because you just found out tonight that you do. They need our colleagues to stop taking cues from a guy who, after a meeting about one of the most important moments in his presidency, puts out a deep fake video, offensive, making fun of the leaders. Who does that? What other president has done something like that when they're actually in a negotiation? This isn't political theater. These are real people, like the woman at Senator Shaheen's spotlight hearing today, who was from Maine, and she is going to talk to her doctor, literally met with her doctor to say, okay, I can't afford these increases, so how do I manage to ration my medication for MS. And the doctor said, it doesn't work like that. The pressure will build in your brain. Well, I hope the pressure from the public, when they see what's going on, is going to build. And we're starting to see it all over the country right now. This is not the time to just accept the status quo and say we can't do anything about it while our constituents are going off that premium cliff. So maybe the president needs to get out and talk to that farmer whose soybean market has dried up. Now he's not going to be able to afford his health insurance, and see that perfect storm of ugly. He's not going to meet those people on the golf course in Mar-a-Lago. I can tell you that right now. He needs to get out there. And it's time to start taking cues and listen to real people and not memes and not fake deep fake videos. This is not a joke. Our bill is a path forward, and we ask them to come to the table and negotiate with us. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from New Jersey is recognized.
Madam President, I rise today because I literally just about 2 minutes ago finished a telephone town hall with over 5,000 people back home in New Jersey that joined up to try to figure out what in the world is happening to our government right now when they see just this abdication of leadership from the White House to leadership here in Congress to step up right now at a time of need. Thousands of people from across New Jersey that had called in worried about how this shutdown is going to affect their lives, how the healthcare costs that they are going to be experiencing are going to reshape their ability to be able to deliver care for those that need care the most. The simple story is they're scared. The people I talked to, they were nervous about what comes next. And frankly, they're pissed off about this. They know that this is not how a government should function. They know that, yes, we need to be able to step up and have negotiations, but how can you have negotiations when one chamber of this Congress isn't even showing up to work this week? That's right. When I told them about how Speaker Johnson didn't even bring the House of Representatives to work this week, even though they were supposed to, they were furious. If we're going to ask public servants to show up to work tomorrow, if we're going to ask our military to show up to work tomorrow without getting paid, the least that our Republicans in the House of Representatives can do is show up to work here. We should be furious about this. It's an abdication of leadership. It is a dereliction of duty. It is one of the most shameful things that I've seen in terms of just giving up on something that is so important, is going to have so much impact on so many people across this country. What I heard is they want us to be the adults in the room, to sit together, to be able to have the kind of dialogue, but instead what we see is just this posturing and back and forth from Donald Trump, from leadership on the Republican side that hold the gavels here. And yes, the Republicans control the White House, they control the Senate, they control the House of Representatives, and the American people know that, and they know who is at fault for where we stand right now, that we are all about 3 hours away from a government shutdown. And this is something that I take personally. As someone who worked as a career civil servant before, I told my constituents today how I worked as a civil servant. I worked through multiple shutdowns before. Of course, I don't want to see us get to this place, and this should be an absolute last resort. But again, when they're not even bothering to show up to work, we know where their priorities land, that they have been moving towards this and barreling our country towards this for a long time now. So my constituents have every bit a right to be feeling pissed off about this. Because after we were already going through this in March, they see government once again not working for them. And they're right. Where have the attempts been over the past few months to work together to avoid this scenario? And again, it's not just about process. I don't want people to think that this is just some tug of war, that this is just some battle for political power, that this is just some challenge between political parties for who has the momentum on their side. There's real struggle. And I heard that on this town hall. We had people like Letitia from Camden who said that with the prices so high, quote, every choice feels like a sacrifice and the stress is constant. It's affecting how they're able to hold up and how they feel when they wake up every morning, what keeps them up at night. Still, she remains determined to advocate for families like hers who deserve stability, dignity, and hope. Or an urgent call from Barbara, who begged us not to back down from this fight. Laura from Brick, who called and urged Democrats not to back down from this fight, and being able to say how concerned she was for just regular citizens to be able to make things easier for everyone impacted. She was asking, how can she help? She's asking, how can she help those that are struggling from the shutdown? She frankly wants to do more than what Speaker Johnson is doing on the other side of this building. Or people like Mick from Toms River, who although was trying to be an informed citizen and learn what was going on, was having trouble figuring out fact from fiction regarding this budget because it's just the sheer amount of disinformation and lies that we see out there in political rhetoric. Lies that are blatantly trying to smear and make it difficult for the American people to understand what's at stake. So yes, when we hear the Speaker of the House talking about how this funding, that this is Democrats that are trying to cut resources from FEMA or make it harder for people to get care through the WIC program for women, infants, and children. Well, look, it's just deception. Because what we already know is that reconciliation bill that was passed, this is something that is estimated to potentially affect 3 million people, preventing them from getting care through the WIC program already. 3 million out of 8 million that get care now. So who is it that's actually hurting people's ability to get those services? And FEMA? Are you kidding me? I literally heard it out of the mouth of the President and the Homeland Security Secretary that they want to abolish FEMA. And here we are hearing it from the Speaker, making it seem like the blame is over here. These are things these are issues that people understand, like Jody from Manchester, who is concerned that with all the rising prices, that she'll have to choose between being able to afford food or medicine because costs are simply too high for her to be able to afford both. No one in this country, the richest, most powerful country in the world, should ever have to make that kind of trade-off. Yet we see right now, we're on the cusp of it, not just 3 hours away from a shutdown, but over the course of tomorrow and the coming days, Americans all over this country will be getting their new bills when it comes to health care. And we see that tens of millions of them will have to pay more, possibly double what they're already paying. Over 4.5 million Americans to lose their care, including many in New Jersey. That is a catastrophe that we see coming. We knew it was coming, and we were trying to take action to be able to address that. And what happened? Kicking the can down the road. When does open enrollment start when it comes to healthcare? It starts in November. So what good is it if we punt towards Thanksgiving, which is what this body tried to do? They need solutions now. They need answers now. And they're not getting it, and they're certainly not seeing anything that resembles leadership in this country right now. So yes, when I'm hearing from Lorena from Forked River, who says that, literally could lose her current health insurance if the ACA premiums go away, that's what we're fighting for. That's what I hope people see over the coming period as this continues on. Because I know it's so easy to make it feels like, again, it's just completely detached. And often it really seems that way. It feels like people here in the Senate, here in Congress, at the White House, that we're playing with other people's chips, that we don't feel it ourselves. I have to say, I found it disgusting when I learned in 2019 and I came into Congress that the President and members of Congress get paid during the shutdown, that they continue to get their salary while service members in our military and other public servants do not, even though they are showing up to do their work. We should not be held to a different standard. We should not be in a place where it seems like we're above the rest. Because that's exactly what the rest of the American people believe. They believe that we think that we're above the law, that we don't have to obey it, that we don't have to follow the rules that other people do, and that's why they are losing trust in this government. And I can tell you, come midnight today, they have every bit reason to believe that, because we have failed to ability to be able to deliver for so many people. We had Lucinda from Whiting write in telling us, begging us to hold the line when it comes to fighting for health care, because in her words, quote, I definitely cannot afford my ACA insurance without the advanced premium tax credits. If costs go up and health care gets more expensive, I will have to go without insurance and not go to the doctor. These are just a fraction of the thousands of calls and emails and outreach that we've received. We asked people to share their stories. We got over 3,500 stories back just this week about people's concerns about what's happening with this shutdown and losing health care. We need to recognize that a president who can't even be bothered to learn about the hurt that is being put forward by his own party when it comes to our health care, that our bill is not one that is looking out for them. We need leaders who understand what is going on. We need leaders who care about the people they are supposed to be leading. We need leaders who will actually be the adults in the room. And yes, so I rise today to make that promise to New Jersey and to the American people that I will keep fighting for you and fight with you as we go through this. And we're going through uncertain times. We're entering unprecedented times. And I know that it's a lot for everyone. But again, we remember why we fight here. That while I'm giving this speech, I'm worried about the care that my father's getting, and my father's health is declining rapidly. Every single one of us knows what it's like to have a loved one struggling when it comes to their care. And I know everyone knows that experience of saying that we would try to move heaven and earth to be able to make sure that they get the care that they need in their time of greatest need. And how can I, when I stand by thinking about 4.5 million Americans, including many in my state, losing health care, making it harder for them to be able to deliver for their family, how can I say that this is a time to roll over, that this is a time to stand down? No. We draw the line here. We fight for your health care. We fight for your lives, your ability to deliver for your loved ones, and to be able to stand up together and say, this is not how our government should work. This is not how our democracy should function. We deserve better. The American people deserve better, and that's what we're going to fight for. We're going to fight for better. With that, I yield back the floor.
The Senate stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
People hostage instead of just letting them do their jobs, which they want to do while we work out our differences? So wrong.
This is democracy. And in a democracy, hostage tactics are the last resort for those who can't win their fights through elections, can't win their fights in Congress, can't win their fights for the presidency, and can't win their fights in the courts.
A government shutdown of any duration would harm hardworking Americans and our economy.
Why should we ask TSA officers to go without their hard-earned pay while they protect our airports?
I'm a senator from Virginia. Some of the hardest effects of shutdown will be seen in my state.
If the government shuts down, it will be average Americans who suffer most.
Some who right now are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent, how they're going to make mortgage payments, how they're going to keep college payments going, how they're going to keep the lights on, how they're going to keep food on the table.
Had the government shut down, hundreds of thousands of people would have not gotten their paychecks. Federal employees would have been furloughed, sent home.
Our military won't get paid, Head Start teachers won't get paid, our wildfire fighters won't get paid, federal prison guards won't get paid.
A government shutdown means seniors who rely on Social Security could be thrown into chaos. Our veterans could see regional VA offices shut down and support services put on hold.
Shutdowns are not good for the economy.
Shutdowns cost taxpayers billions of dollars per week.
Shutdowns cost the economy billions of dollars.
They cost businesses money. They could even cost a downgrade to the nation's credit rating.
Families who benefit from WIC and other nutrition programs could see benefits halted.
If this shutdown continues indefinitely, 39 million Americans will risk not having enough food. They will lose their SNAP benefits in February. So that means American children will be going to bed hungry. It's unacceptable.
The longer that this shutdown goes on, the more Americans it will be affected.
Critical services and our economy are being threatened with poison pill partisanship. Shutting down the government should not be a negotiating tactic.
Hostage taking is all they have left. A last gasp of those who cannot cope with the realities of our democracy.
And now it is my distinct honor to introduce our nation's Secretary of War, the Honorable Pete Hegseth.
Please take your seats. Well, Mr. Chairman, the Joint Chiefs, generals, admirals, commanders, officers, senior enlisted, NCOs, enlisted, and every member of our American military, good morning. Good morning and welcome to the War Department, because the era of the Department of Defense is over. You see, the motto of my first platoon was, "Those who long for peace must prepare for war." This is, of course, not a new idea. This crowd knows that. The origin dates to the 4th century Rome and has been repeated ever since, including by our first commander-in-chief, George Washington, the first leader of the War Department. It captures a simple yet profound truth. To ensure peace, we must prepare for war. From this moment forward, the only mission of the newly restored Department of War is this: warfighting. Preparing for war and preparing to win. Unrelenting and uncompromising in that pursuit. Not because we want war. No one here wants war. But it's because we love peace. We love peace for our fellow citizens. They deserve peace, and they rightfully expect us to deliver it. Our number one job, of course, is to be strong so that we can prevent war in the first place. The President talks about it all the time. It's called peace through strength. And as history teaches us, the only people who actually deserve peace are those who are willing to wage war to defend it. That's why pacifism is so naive and dangerous. It ignores human nature and it ignores human history. Either you protect your people and your sovereignty, or you will be subservient to something or someone. It's a truth as old as time. And since waging war is so costly in blood and treasure, we owe our republic a military that will win any war we choose, or any war that is thrust upon us. Should our enemies choose foolishly to challenge us, they will be crushed by the violence, precision, and ferocity of the War Department. In other words, to our enemies, F-A-F-O. If necessary, our troops can translate that for you. Another way to put it is peace through strength, brought to you by the warrior ethos. And we are restoring both. As President Trump has said, and he's right, we have the strongest, most powerful, most lethal, and most prepared military on the planet. That is true, full stop. Nobody can touch us. It's not even close. This is true largely because of the historic investments that he made in his first term, and we will continue in this term. But it's also true because of the leaders in this room and the incredible troops that you all lead. But the world, and as the chairman mentioned, our enemies get a vote. You feel it, I feel it. This is a moment of urgency, mounting urgency. Enemies gather, threats grow. There is no time for games. We must be prepared. If we're going to prevent and avoid war, we must prepare now. We are the strength part of peace through strength. And either we're ready to win or we are not. You see, this urgent moment, of course, requires more troops, more munitions, more drones, more Patriots, more submarines, more B-21 bombers. It requires more innovation, more AI in everything and ahead of the curve. More cyber effects, more counter-UAS, more space, more speed. America is the strongest, but we need to get stronger and quickly. The time is now, and the cause is urgent. The moment requires restoring and refocusing our defense industrial base, our shipbuilding industry, and onshoring all critical components. It requires, as President Trump has done, getting our allies and partners to step up and share the burden. America cannot do everything. The free world requires allies with real hard power, real military leadership, and real military capabilities. The War Department is tackling and prioritizing all of these things. And I'll be giving a speech next month that will showcase the speed, innovation, and generational acquisition reforms we are undertaking urgently. Likewise, the nature of the threats we face in our hemisphere and in deterring China is another speech for another day, coming soon. This speech today, as I drink my coffee, this speech today is about people, and it's about culture. The topic today is about the nature of ourselves. Because no plan, no program, no reform, no formation will ultimately succeed unless we have the right people and the right culture at the War Department. If I've learned one core lesson in my 8 months in this job, it's that personnel is policy. Personnel is policy. The best way to take care of troops is to give them good leaders committed to the warfighting culture of the department. Not perfect leaders, good leaders. Competent, qualified, professional, agile, aggressive, innovative, risk-taking, apolitical, faithful to their oath and to the Constitution. Eugene Sledge, in his World War II memoir, wrote, quote, "War is brutish, inglorious, and a terrible waste. Combat leaves an indelible mark on those who are forced to endure it. The only redeeming factors are my comrades' incredible bravery and their devotion to each other. In combat, there are thousands of variables, as I learned in Iraq and Afghanistan, and as so many of you did in so many more places. Leaders can only control about 3 of them. You control how well you're trained, mostly how well you're equipped, and the last variable is how well you lead. After that, you're on your own. Our warfighters are entitled to be led by the best and most capable leaders. That is who we need you all to be. Even then, in combat, even if you do everything right, you may still lose people because the enemy always gets a vote. We have a sacred duty to ensure that our warriors are led by the most capable and qualified combat leaders. This is one thing you and I can control. And we owe it to the force to deliver it. For too long, we have simply not done that. The military has been forced by foolish and reckless politicians to focus on the wrong things. In many ways, this speech is about fixing decades of decay, some of it obvious, some of it hidden. Or as the chairman has put it, we are clearing out the debris, removing the distractions, clearing the way for leaders to be leaders. You might say we're ending the war on warriors. I heard someone wrote a book about that. For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, based on historic so-called firsts. We've pretended that combat arms and non-combat arms are the same thing. We've weeded out so-called toxic leaders under the guise of double-blind psychology assessments, promoting risk-averse, go-along-to-get-along conformists instead. You name it, the department did it. Foolish and reckless political leaders set the wrong compass heading, and we lost our way. We became the woke department, but not anymore. Right now, I'm looking out at a sea of Americans who made a choice when they were young men and young women to do something most Americans will not, to serve something greater than yourselves, to fight for God and country, for freedom and the Constitution. You made a choice to serve when others did not, and I commend you. You are truly the best of America. But this does not mean, and this goes for all of us, that our path to this auditorium on this day was a straight line, or that the conditions of the formations we lead are where we want them to be. You love your country, and we love this uniform, which is why we must do better. We just have to be honest. We have to say with our mouths what we see with our eyes, to just tell it like it is in plain English, to point out the obvious things right in front of us. That's what leaders must do. We cannot go another day without directly addressing the plank in our own eye, without addressing the problems in our own commands and in our own formations. This administration has done a great deal from day one to remove the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage that had infected our department, to rip out the politics. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that shit. I've made it my mission to uproot the obvious distractions that made us less capable and less lethal. That said, the War Department requires the next step. Underneath the woke garbage is a deeper problem, and a more important problem that we are fixing and fixing fast. Common sense is back at the White House, so making the necessary changes is actually pretty straightforward. President Trump expects it. And the litmus test for these changes is pretty simple. Would I want my eldest son, who is 15 years old, eventually joining the types of formations that we are currently wielding? If in any way the answer to that is no, or even yes, but, then we're doing something wrong. Because my son is no more important than any other American citizen who dons the cloth of our nation. He is no more important than your son. All precious souls made in the image and likeness of God. Every parent deserves to know that their son or their daughter that joins our ranks is entering exactly the kind of unit that the Secretary of War would want his son to join. Think of it as the golden rule test. Jesus said, do unto others that which you would have done unto yourself. It's the ultimate simplifying test of truth. The new War Department golden rule is this: do unto your unit as you would have done unto your own child's unit. Would you want him serving with fat or unfit or undertrained troops? Or alongside people who can't meet basic standards? or in a unit where standards were lowered so certain types of troops could make it in a unit where leaders were promoted for reasons other than merit, performance, and warfighting? The answer is not just no, it's hell no. This means at the War Department, first and foremost, we must restore a ruthless, dispassionate, and common sense application of standards. I don't want my son serving alongside troops who are out of shape, or in combat unit with females who can't meet the same combat arms physical standards as men, or troops who are not fully proficient on their assigned weapons, platform, or task, or under a leader who was the first but not the best. Standards must be uniform, gender neutral, and high. If not, they're not standards. They're just suggestions. Suggestions that get our sons and daughters killed. When it comes to combat arms units, and there are many different stripes across our joint force, the era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now. At every level, either you can meet the standard, either you can do the job, either you are disciplined, fit, and trained, or you are out. And that's why today, at my direction, and this is the first of 10 Department of War directives that are arriving at your commands as we speak and in your inbox. Today, at my direction, each service will ensure that every requirement for every combat MOS, for every designated combat arms position, returns to the highest male standard only. Because this job is life or death. Standards must be met. And not just met, at every level we should seek to exceed the standard, to push the envelope, to compete. It's common sense and core to who we are and what we do. It should be in our DNA. Today, at my direction, we are also adding a combat field test for combat arms units that must be executable in any environment at any time and with combat equipment. These tests, they'll look familiar. They'll resemble the Army Expert Physical Fitness Assessment or the Marine Corps Combat Fitness Test. I'm also directing that warfighters in combat jobs execute their service fitness test at a gender-neutral, age-normed male standard scored above 70%. It all starts with physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT, so can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the joint force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year, every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day. Should be common sense. I mean, most units do that already. But we're codifying it. And we're not talking like hot yoga and stretching. Real hard PT, either as a unit or as an individual. At every level, from the Joint Chiefs to everyone in this room to the youngest private, leaders set the standard. And so many of you do this already. Active, Guard, and Reserve. This also means grooming standards. No more beards, long hair, superficial individual expression. We're going to cut our hair, shave our beards, and adhere to standards. Because it's like the broken windows theory of policing. It's like when you let the small stuff go, the big stuff eventually goes. So you have to address the small stuff. This is on duty, in the field, and in the rear. If you want a beard, you can join Special Forces. If not, then shave. We don't have a military full of Nordic pagans. But unfortunately, we have had leaders who either refuse to call BS and enforce standards, or leaders who felt like they were not allowed to enforce standards. Both are unacceptable. And that's why today, at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. The era of rampant and ridiculous shaving profiles is done. Simply put, if you do not meet the male-level physical standards for combat positions, cannot pass a PT test, or don't want to shave and look professional, it's time for a new position or a new profession. I sincerely appreciate the proactive efforts the secretaries have already taken in some of those areas, service secretaries. And these directives are intended to simply accelerate those efforts. On the topic of standards, allow me a few words to talk about toxic leaders. Upholding and demanding high standards is not toxic. Enforcing high standards, not toxic leadership. Leading warfighters toward the goals of high, gender-neutral, and uncompromising standards in order to forge a cohesive, formidable, and lethal Department of War is not toxic. It is our duty, consistent with our constitutional oath. Real toxic leadership is endangering subordinates with low standards. Real toxic leadership is promoting people based on immutable characteristics or quotas instead of based on merit. Real toxic leadership is promoting destructive ideologies that are an anathema to the Constitution and the laws of nature and nature's God, as Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence. The definition of toxic has been turned upside down, and we're correcting that. That's why today, at my direction, we're undertaking a full review of the department's definitions of so-called toxic leadership, bullying, and hazing, to empower leaders to enforce standards without fear of retribution or second guessing. Of course, you can't do like nasty bullying and hazing. We're talking about words like bullying and hazing and toxic. They've been weaponized and bastardized inside our formations, undercutting commanders and NCOs. No more. Setting, achieving, and maintaining high standards is what you all do. And if that makes me toxic, then so be it. Second, today, at our direction, we're ensuring that every service, every unit, every schoolhouse, and every form of professional military education conduct an immediate review of their standards. Now, we've done this in many places already, but today it goes across the entire Department of War. Any place where tried and true physical standards were altered, especially since 2015 when combat arms standards were changed to ensure females could qualify, must be returned to their original standard. Other standards have been manipulated to hit racial quotas as well, which is just as unacceptable. This too must end. Merit only. The President talks about it all the time, merit-based. Here are two basic frameworks I urge you to pursue in this process. Standards I call, my staff's heard all about them, the 1990 test and the E6 test. The 1990s test is simple. What were the military standards in 1990? And if they have changed, tell me why. Was it a necessary change based on the evolving landscape of combat? Or was the change due to a softening, weakening, or gender-based pursuit of other priorities? 1990s seems to be as good a place to start as any. And the E6 test. Ask yourself, does what you're doing make the leadership, accountability, and lethality efforts of an E6, or frankly an O3, does it make it easier or more complicated? Does the change empower staff sergeants, petty officers, and tech sergeants to get back to basics? The answer should be a resounding yes. The E6 test, or O3 test, clarifies a lot, and it clarifies quickly. Because war does not care if you're a man or a woman. Neither does the enemy. Nor does the weight of your rucksack, the size of an artillery round, or the body weight of a casualty on the battlefield who must be carried. This, and I want to be very clear about this, this is not about preventing women from serving. We very much value the impact of female troops. Our female officers and NCOs are the absolute best in the world. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. It will also mean that weak men won't qualify because we're not playing games. This is combat. This is life or death. As we all know, this is you versus an enemy hell-bent on killing you. To be an effective, lethal fighting force, you must trust that the warrior alongside you in battle is capable, truly physically capable of doing what is necessary under fire. You know this is the only standard you would want for your kids and for your grandkids. Apply the War Department Golden Rule, the 1990 test, and the E6 test, and it's really hard to go wrong. Third, we are attacking and ending the walking on eggshells and zero-defect command culture. A risk-averse culture means officers execute not to lose instead of to win. A risk-averse culture means NCOs are not empowered to enforce standards. Commanders and NCOs don't take necessary risks or make tough adjustments for fear of rocking the boat or making mistakes. A blemish-free record is what peacetime leaders covet the most, which is the worst of all incentives. We, as senior leaders, need to end the poisonous culture of risk aversion and empower our NCOs at all levels to enforce standards. Truth be told, for the most part, we don't need new standards. We just need to reestablish a culture where enforcing standards is possible. And that's why today, at my direction, I'm issuing new policies that will overhaul the IG, EO, and MEO processes. I call it the No More Walking on Eggshells policy. We are liberating commanders and NCOs. We are liberating you. We are overhauling an Inspector General process, the IG, that has been weaponized, putting complainers, ideologues, and poor performers in the driver's seat. We're doing the same with the equal opportunity and military equal opportunity policies, the EO and MEO at our department. No more frivolous complaints, no more anonymous complaints, no more repeat complainants, no more smearing reputations, no more endless waiting, no more legal limbo, no more sidetracking careers, no more walking on eggshells. Of course, being a racist has been illegal in our formation since 1948. The same goes for sexual harassment. Both are wrong and illegal. Those kinds of infractions will be ruthlessly enforced. But telling someone to shave or get a haircut or to get in shape or to fix their uniform or to show up on time or to work hard, that's exactly the kind of discrimination we want. We are not civilians. You are not civilians. You are set apart for a distinct purpose. So we, as a department, need to stop acting and thinking like civilians and get back to basics and put the power back in the hands of commanders and NCOs. Commanders and NCOs who make life and death decisions. Commanders and NCOs who enforce standards and ensure readiness. Commanders and NCOs who, in this War Department, have to look in the mirror and have to pass the Golden Rule test. My kids, your kids, America's sons and daughters. So I urge you all here today and those watching, take this guidance and run with it. The core of this speech is the 10 directives we're announcing today. They were written for you, for Army leadership, for Navy leadership, for Marine Corps leadership, for Air Force leadership, Space Force leadership. These directives are designed to take the monkey off your back and put you, the leadership, back in the driver's seat. Move out with urgency because we have your back. I have your back. And the Commander-in-Chief has your back. And when we give you this guidance, we know mistakes will be made. It's the nature of leadership. But you should not pay for earnest mistakes for your entire career. And that's why today, at my direction, we're making changes to the retention of adverse information on personnel records that will allow leaders with forgivable, earnest, or minor infractions to not be encumbered by those infractions in perpetuity. People make honest mistakes, and our mistakes should not define an entire career. Otherwise, we only try not to make mistakes, and that's not the business we're in. We need risk takers and aggressive leaders, and a culture that supports you. Fourth, at the War Department, promotions across the Joint Force will be based on one thing: merit. Colorblind, gender-neutral, merit-based. The entire promotion process, including evaluations of warfighting capabilities, is being thoroughly re-examined. We've already done a lot in this area, but more changes are coming soon. We'll promote top-performing officers and NCOs faster and get rid of poor performers more quickly. Evaluations, education, and field exercises will become real evaluations, not box checks, for every one of us at every level. These same reforms happened before World War II as well. General George Marshall and Secretary of War Henry Stimson did the same thing. And we won a world war because of it. As it happens, when he started the job, Chairman Kane gave me a frame and a photo to hang in my office. A matching frame and photo hangs in his. It's a photo of Marshall and Stimson preparing for World War II. Those two leaders famously kept the door open between their offices for the entirety of the war. They worked together, civilian and uniform, every single day. Chairman Kane and I do the same. There is no daylight between us. Our doors are always open. Our job together is to ensure our military is led by the very best, ready to answer the nation's call. Fifth, as you have seen, and the media has obsessed over, I have fired a number of senior officers since taking over. The previous chairman, other members of the Joint Chiefs, combatant commanders, and other commanders. The rationale for me has been straightforward. It's nearly impossible to change a culture with the same people who helped create or even benefited from that culture, even if that culture was created by a previous president and previous secretary. My approach has been simple. When in doubt, assess the situation, follow your gut, and if it's the best for the military, make a change. We all serve at the pleasure of the president every single day. But in many ways, it's not their fault. It's not your fault. As foolish and reckless as the woke department was, those officers were following elected political leadership. An entire generation of generals and admirals were told that they must parrot the insane fallacy that, quote, our diversity is our strength. Of course, we know our unity is our strength. They had to put out dizzying DEI and LGBTQI+ statements. They were told females and males are the same thing, or that males who think they're females is totally normal. They were told that we need a green fleet and electric tanks. They were told to kick out Americans who refuse an emergency vaccine. They followed civilian policies set by foolish and reckless political leaders. Our job, my job, has been to determine which leaders simply did what they must to answer the prerogatives of civilian leadership, and which leaders are truly invested in the woke department, and therefore incapable of embracing the War Department and executing new lawful orders. That's it. It's that simple. So for the past 8 months, we've gotten a good look under the hood of our officer corps. We've done our best to thoroughly assess the human terrain. We've had to make trade-offs and some difficult decisions. It's more of an art than a science. We have been and will continue to be judicious, but also expeditious. The new compass heading is clear. Out with the Shirellis, the McKenzies, and the Millies, and in with the Stockdales, the Schwarzkopfs, and the Pattons. More leadership changes will be made, of that I'm certain. Not because we want to, but because we must. Once again, this is life and death. The sooner we have the right people, the sooner we can advance the right policies. Personnel is policy. But I look out at this group, and I see great Americans. Leaders who have given decades to our great republic, at great sacrifice to yourselves and to your families. But if the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign. We would thank you for your service. But I suspect, I know, the overwhelming majority of you feel the opposite. These words make your hearts full. You love the War Department because you love what you do, the profession of arms. You are hereby liberated to be an apolitical, hard-charging, no-nonsense, constitutional leader that you joined the military to be. We need you locked in on the M. Not the D, the E, or the I. Not the DEI or the DIE of dime. By that I mean the M, military, of the instruments of national power. We have entire departments across the government dedicated to diplomatic, informational, and economic lines of effort. We do the M. Nobody else does. And our GOFOs need to master it in every domain and every scenario. No more distractions, no more political ideologies, no more debris. Now, of course, we're going to disagree at times. We would not be Americans if we didn't. Being a leader in a large organization like ours means having frank conversations and differences of opinion. You will win some arguments, and you will lose some arguments. But when civilian leaders issue lawful orders, we execute. We are professionals in the profession of arms. Our entire constitutional system is predicated upon this understanding. Now, it seems like a small thing, but it's not. This includes as well the behavior of our troops online. To that end, I want to thank and recognize the services for their new proactive social media policies. Use them. Anonymous, online, or keyboard complaining is not worthy of a warrior. It's cowardice masquerading as conscience. Anonymous, unit-level social media pages that trash commanders, demoralize troops, and undermine unit cohesion must not be tolerated. Again, O3s, E6s. Sixth, we must train and we must maintain. Any moment that we are not training on our mission or maintaining our equipment is a moment we are less prepared for preventing or winning the next war. That is why today, at my direction, we are drastically reducing the ridiculous amount of mandatory training that individuals and units must execute. We've already ended the most egregious. Now we're giving you back real time. Less PowerPoint briefings and fewer online courses, more time in the motor pool, and more time on the range. Our job is to make sure you have the money, equipment, weapons, and parts to train and maintain, and then you take it from there. You all know this because it's common sense. The tougher and the higher the standards in our units, the higher the retention rates in those units. Warriors want to be challenged. Troops want to be tested. When you don't train and you don't maintain, you demoralize. And that's when our best people decide to take their talents to the civilian world. The leaders who created the woke department have already driven out too many hard chargers. We reverse that trend right now. There is no world in which high-intensity war exists without pain, agony, and human tragedy. We are in a dangerous line of work. You are in a dangerous line of work. We may lose good people. But let no warrior cry out from the grave, if only I had been properly trained. We will not lose warfighters because we failed to train or equip them or resource them. Shame on us if we do. Train like your warriors' lives depend on it, because they do. To that point, basic training is being restored to what it should be. Scary, tough, and disciplined. We're empowering drill sergeants to instill healthy fear in new recruits. forged. Yes, they can shark attack, they can toss bunks, they can swear, and yes, they can put their hands on recruits. This does not mean they can be reckless or violate the law, but they can use tried and true methods to motivate new recruits, to make them the warriors they need to be. Back to basics at basic as well. Of course, and you know this, basic training is not where mission readiness should end. The nature of the evolving threat environment demands that everyone in every job must be ready to join the fight if needed. A core credo of the Marine Corps is every Marine a rifleman. It means that everyone, regardless of MOS, is proficient enough to engage an enemy threat at sea, in the air, or in a so-called rear area. We need to ensure that every member of our uniformed military maintains baseline proficiency in basic combat skills, especially because the next war, like the last, will likely not have a rear area. Finally, as President Trump rightly pointed out when he changed the department name, the United States has not won a major theater war since the name was changed to the Department of Defense in 1947. One conflict stands out in stark contrast: the Gulf War. Why? Well, there's a number of reasons, but it was a limited mission with overwhelming force and a clear end state. But why did we execute and win the Gulf War the way we did in 1991? There's two overwhelming reasons. One was President Ronald Reagan's military buildup gave an overwhelming advantage. And two, military and Pentagon leadership had previous formative battlefield experiences. The men who led this department during the Gulf War were mostly combat veterans of the Vietnam War. They said never again to mission creep or nebulous end states. The same holds true today. Our civilian and military leadership is chock full of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan who say never again to nation building and nebulous end states. This clear-eyed view, all the way in the White House, combined with President Trump's military buildup, postures us for future victories if, and we will, and when we embrace the War Department. And we must. We are preparing every day. We have to be prepared for war, not for defense. We're training warriors, not defenders. We fight wars to win, not to defend. Defense is something you do all the time. It's inherently reactionary and can lead to overuse, overreach, and mission creep. War is something you do sparingly, on our own terms, and with clear aims. We fight to win. We unleash overwhelming and punishing violence on the enemy. We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters. That's all I ever wanted as a platoon leader. And it's all my E6 squad leaders ever wanted, back to that E6 rule. We let our leaders fight their formations, and then we have their back. It's very simple, yet incredibly powerful. A few months ago, I was at the White House when President Trump announced his Liberation Day for America's trade policy. It was a landmark day. Well, today is another Liberation Day. The liberation of America's warriors, in name, in deed, and in authorities. You kill people and break things for a living. You are not politically correct and don't necessarily belong always in polite society. We are not an army of one. We are a joint force of millions of selfless Americans. We are warriors. We are purpose-built, not for fair weather, blue skies, or calm seas. We were built to load up in the back of helicopters, 5 tons, or Zodiacs, in the dead of night, in fair weather or foul, to go to dangerous places, to find those who would do our nation harm, and deliver justice on behalf of the American people in close and brutal combat if necessary. You are different. We fight not because we hate what's in front of us. We fight because we love what's behind us. You see, the Ivy League faculty lounges will never understand us, and that's okay, because they could never do what you do. The media will mischaracterize us, and that's okay, because deep down they know the reason they can do what they do is you. In this profession, you feel comfortable inside the violence so that our citizens can live peacefully. Lethality is our calling card, and victory our only acceptable end state. In closing, a few weeks ago, at our monthly Pentagon Christian prayer service, I recited a commander's prayer. It's a simple yet meaningful prayer for wisdom for commanders and leaders. I encourage you to look it up if you've never seen it. But the prayer, it ends like this. And most of all, Lord, please keep my soldiers safe. Lead them, guide them, protect them, watch over them. And as you gave all of yourself for me, help me give all of myself for them. And amen. I have prayed this prayer many times since I've had the privilege of being your secretary. And I will continue to pray this prayer for each of you as you command and lead our nation's finest. Go forth and do good things, hard things. President Trump has your back, and so do I. And you'll hear from him shortly. Move out and draw fire, because we are the War Department. Godspeed.
Room, attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of War.
Well, you've heard from me, so now it's the main event, our Commander-in-Chief. I have the privilege every single day of watching him put America first, of ensuring that our warfighters have everything they need. His compass is clear. He's easy to follow. because you know he has our back. I was thinking backstage, the man who was the commander-in-chief when the War Department was created was George Washington. The man who was president when the War Department was reestablished is President Trump. And when he found out about this gathering of senior leaders, he said, I would be honored to come in order to address and thank the incredible Americans who defend our nation. He has a heart full of gratitude and love for what you do, and we get a chance to see it every day. And I'm honored that this morning you all firsthand get to see it as well. So ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the 45th and 47th President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, Pete. Great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very, don't laugh, you're not allowed to do that. You know what, just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future. But you just feel nice and loose, okay? Because we're all on the same team. And I was told that, sir, you won't hear a murmur in the room. I said, we got to loosen these guys up a little bit. So you just have a good time. But I want to thank Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, General Raisin Kane for a reason, they call him that. When I heard his name, I said, you're the guy I'm looking for. The Joint Chiefs of Staff and so many others in this room who together represent the greatest and most elite fighting force in the history of the world, the United States military. We're very proud of our military. I rebuilt the military during my first term. It's one of the greatest achievements. We had the greatest economy in history, and I built the military. Those are the two things I say more than anything else. And I also kept us safe at the borders. We had very good borders. We didn't have people coming in from jails and prisons and everything like took place over the last 4 years. They'll never forget what happened to this country over the last 4 years with the incompetence. There could be no higher honor than to serve as your commander-in-chief. It is a great honor. I look at you, just incredible people. Central casting, I might add. To each and every one of you, I thank you for your unwavering devotion to the armed forces and to the country that we've all sworn a sacred oath to defend. We all have that oath, every one of us. I'm thrilled to be here this morning to address the senior leadership of what is once again known around the world as the Department of War. I know Pete spoke about it. He gave a great speech, I thought. Great speech. I don't want him to get so good. I hate that. You know? No, I hate it. I almost fired him. I said, you can't, I don't want to go on after that. No, he gave a great speech, but he talked about Department of War. We were sitting there. I said, didn't it used to be called the Department of War? And he goes, yes, sir. They changed it like in the early 50s. So we won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything in between and everything before that. We only won. And then we went, in a way, woke. That was probably the first sign of wokeness. And we changed it to defense instead of war. And I said, what do you think? How do you think if we changed it back? Would that be a nice idea? And Pete loved it immediately. Some people thought about it. You know, they gave it a little thought. But in the end, we did it. And I have to be honest, it's so popular. I thought it would be met with fury on the left. But they're sort of giving up, I must be honest with you. They've had it. They've had it with Trump. They've been after me for so many years now. Here we are. Here we are. Come to the White House anytime you'd like. No, they've given up. They're bad, a lot of bad people. But all over, it's been so popular. It's been very popular. I really thought that we were going to have to sort of fight it through. There's been no fight. There's been no fight. Like what I called the Gulf of America, the Gulf of America, because to me it was always the Gulf of America. I could never understand. We have 92% of the frontage, and for years, actually 350 years, they were there before us. It was called the Gulf of Mexico. I just had this idea. I'm looking at a map. I'm saying, we have most of the frontage. Why is it Gulf of Mexico? Why isn't it the Gulf of America? And I made the change, and it went smoothly. I mean, we had a couple of fake news outlets that refused to make the change. And then one of them, AP, took us to court, and we won. And the judge, who was a somewhat liberal judge, said, the name is the Gulf of America, because AP refused to call it the Gulf of America. They wrote, they're not a good outfit, by the way. They call it the Gulf of Mexico. I said, no, the Gulf of America is the name. And the judge actually said that, in fact, you can't even go into the room because what you're doing is not appropriate. The name is the Gulf of America. Google Maps changed the name. Everybody did, but AP wouldn't, and then we won in court. How about that? Isn't that so cool? The Secretary Hegseth beautifully described the name change reflects far more than the shift in branding. It's really a historic reassertion of our purpose and our identity and our pride. That's when we go with the word war. And you know, we want war because we want to have no wars, but you have to be there, and you know, sometimes you have to do it. I have settled so many wars since we're here. We're here almost 9 months, and I've settled 7, and yesterday we might have settled the biggest of them all, although I don't know. Pakistan, India was very big. Both nuclear powers, I settled that. But yesterday could be the settlement in the Middle East. That hasn't happened for 3,000 years. I said, how long have you been fighting? 3,000 years, sir. That's a long time. But we got it, I think, settled. We'll see. Hamas has to agree. And if they don't, it's going to be very tough on them. But it is what it is. But all of the Arab nations, Muslim nations have agreed. Israel has agreed. It's an amazing thing. It just came together. War is very strange. You know, you never know what's going to happen with war. The easiest one of them all is Putin. I said, number one, it's a war that would have never happened if I were president, if the election weren't rigged. And if I were president, that war would have never happened, not even a little chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years. But I knew Putin very well, and I thought that would be easy because I know him so well. Well, that one turned out to be the hardest of them all. We had some that were not settlable, and they all got settled. So if this works out, that we did yesterday with the Middle East, then that's more than a war. That's lots of wars. That's all combined. That's a lot of wars. Many of you were over there in many different capacities in many different countries. That's a big part of the earth. But if that works out, it would be 8+. I'm going to give myself 2 or 3 for that one. And then we just have the one to settle, and we have to settle it up with President Putin and Zelensky. Got to get them together and get it done. But the only way we can do that is through strength. I mean, if we were weak, they wouldn't even take my phone call. But we have extreme strength. We had the horror show in Afghanistan, which is really the reason I think that Putin went in. He saw that horror show by Biden and his team of incompetent people. And that showed, I think it gave him a path in. I wasn't there any longer. I watched that, and it was so horrible. I think it was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. And now we're back, and that's it. We're not going to have any of that crap happen, I can tell you. That was terrible, so terrible. Together we're reawakening the warrior spirit, and this is a spirit that won and built this nation, and from the cavalry that tamed the Great Plains to the ferocious, unyielding power of Patton Bradley and the great General Douglas MacArthur. These are all great men in this effort. We're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even waver a little bit. It's the way it is. And that includes our great police officers and firemen and all of these people that are doing so well. Together over the next few years, we're going to make our military stronger, tougher, faster, fiercer, and more powerful than it has ever been before. I rebuilt our nuclear, as you probably know, but we'll upgrade that also and just hope we never have to use it. We have to hope we never have to use it, because the power of that is so incredible. I see things. I don't think they'd show it to you. I really wouldn't want them to show it to you. But when you see the result of what's left, you never want to use that. Never, never, ever. We were a little bit threatened by Russia recently, and I sent a submarine, nuclear submarine, the most lethal weapon ever made. Number one, you can't detect it. There's no way. We're 25 years ahead of Russia and China in submarines. Russia's actually second in submarines. China's third, but they're coming up. They're coming up. They're way lower in nuclear too, but in 5 years they'll be equal. They're coming up. And you don't have to be that good with nuclear. You could have 1/20th what you have now and still do the damage that would be, that'd be so horrendous.